Good evening. Good evening and welcome to tonight's state representative debate. Tonight's debate is hosted by Abington Community Access and Media and co-sponsored by the Abington Democrat Town Committee and the Abington Republican Town Committee. My name is Tim Chapin. I'll be your moderator this evening. We ask that you hold all applause to the end of the debate when you will have the time to applaud both candidates. Tonight's debate will feature questions from the audience. People wishing to submit questions are asked to write the questions on the index cards available to the table on my left. When the questions are submitted, we ask that you avoid personal attacks and your questions be relevant to both candidates and pertain to local or state government. After writing your question, turn the card into our question screeners, and if they decide it meets these guidelines, it will be passed on to me to be asked to the candidates. If at any time there are no questions from the audience readily available, I have a list of reserved questions that I will ask. Our question screeners tonight, to my left, from the Democrat Town Committee, Ed Toomey, and from the Republican Town Committee, Aaron Christian. Tonight's official timekeeper is Jim Conley. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to make an opening statement. From there, we'll move on to our round of questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question. When you have 10 seconds remaining, Jim will raise his hand and hold it up. When you hear this sound, you must stop immediately. If time permits and all questions from the audience have been exhausted, I will allow each candidate to ask a question to their opponent. Each candidate will then be given 2 more minutes to make a closing statement. Tonight's debate will be held to a 1-hour time limit. At no point during opening statements, questions, or closing statements will comments, noises, or applause be allowed from members of the audience. If there are any violations of this rule, I'll immediately request the debate be paused and the microphones be shut down until the violator or violators are removed from the room. With that said, allow me to introduce tonight's participants. From Abington, the Democratic nominee, Alex Bezanson, and also from Abington, the Republican nominee, Allison Sullivan. Thank you both for being here this evening.
Thank you.
We'll begin with opening statements, and we'll start.
I believe I was starting, correct? Okay. Thank you, Tim, for moderating this forum. Thank you to the Republican and Democrat town committees for co-hosting this event. Thank you, Ed, Aaron, and Jim also. And of course, thank you to all of you here in the audience and everyone listening in at home. It's hard to believe this election is less than 2 weeks away. I've met thousands of people at their doorsteps, in their living rooms, at town events. And I'm humbled and inspired by the groundswell of support and words of encouragement I've received these past several months. Thank you for that support. My name is Allison Sullivan, and I'm running to become your next state representative in the 7th Plymouth District. I'm a lifelong resident of Abington. I went to Abington Public Schools and graduated from Cardinal Spellman High School. I went on to receive my bachelor's degree in sociology from Suffolk University, and I'm currently in my 4th and final year at New England School of Law. After graduating from Suffolk University, I had the opportunity to go work at the United States Immigration Court as a legal assistant. After that, I took a position at the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Massachusetts in their Victim Witness Unit. I currently serve the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the Executive Office for Administration and Finance as a legal assistant. I'm running for state representative because I believe in the district I call home. I believe in public service. The 7th Plymouth District deserves a state representative who is going to be a strong, independent voice on Beacon Hill on behalf of Abington, East Bridgewater, and Whitman. Someone willing and able to work alongside Governor Baker for our district's fair share of local and school aid, opposing sanctuary cities and Massachusetts becoming a sanctuary state, supporting our police officers and our first responders, tackling the opioid crisis, and securing additional funding for treatment programs. My life experiences will serve me well to be the new voice for the people of Abington, East Bridgewater, and Whitman. I promise to be the representative you can trust and be proud of.
Alex, 2 minutes.
Good evening to everyone, and thank you to the 2 town committees for hosting this event and Abington Community Access. My name is Alex Bezanson. I grew up in Quincy and moved to Abington in 1987 when my son Brian was just 4 years old. I coached his soccer, baseball, and basketball teams when he was young and immediately felt a connection to the community. In 2002, I married my lovely wife Lisa, and together we own a small contracting business. In the early 1990s, I was appointed to the Abington Conservation Commission. I spent 23 years on that board, 15 as chairman. I then served 1 year as a water commissioner, and as a water commissioner, I proposed a policy, and it was adopted, to waive all system development fees for low-income senior and veteran housing. In 2015, I was elected to the Abington Board of Selectmen, and as a selectman, I was able to reach an agreement with the City of Brockton to increase Abington sewer capacity from 1 million gallons per day to 1.5 million gallons. I was instrumental in obtaining a grant of $178,000 for a dog park in Abington, and I pushed for the adoption of the stretch code, which was one of the last pieces of the puzzle to become a green community. With that came a grant of $164,000. After our own family tragedy in 2008, Lisa and I formed the HUG Foundation to help families that are going through medical issues. Throughout the years, we have donated quietly to many Abington residents. We also founded the Abington Substance Awareness Coalition to be a resource for education and prevention for our students. And I might just add that after our debate on WATD, I received a phone call which led to an anonymous $50,000 grant for the Abington Substance Abuse to continue the education programs in the school. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. First question for both candidates. We'll start with Alex. Both candidates have discussed that changes needed in the Chapter 70 school finance formula. How would you fix this? Is it a case of approving more money, overhauling the formula altogether, or some other solution? You have 1 minute.
Well, the Beacon Hill lawmakers have shortchanged the education of our students for several years. The part of the problem is the demographics have changed, the population, wealth, the values of the homes have changed. We need to adjust the formula, and that's going to be done in the next session. And I've already spoken to the chairman of that committee, expressed my concerns with her, and I think I will be an advocate for this district on Beacon Hill. That's my #1 concern right now, is straightening out the school funding. With more school funding from the state, it frees up other money for other projects in the town.
Thank you. Allison, 1 minute.
So since I decided to run for state representative, I've been advocating for more money in the Chapter 70 funding. You know, I've talked about how if the state upheld the original promise back in 1993 with the Act to Improve Public Education, Abington, Whitman, East Bridgewater would have all received more than. Abington was at a $1.2 million additional to their budget, current FY18 budget. East Bridgewater would have received $2.2 million on top of their current budget, and Whitman would have received $1.6 million. So what I would do is I would advocate for more funding to go into Chapter 70. I would work well with Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, to ensure that Abington, Whitman, East Bridgewater would receive their fair share and that the state upholds their original promise.
Thank you, Allison. Next question. Can you name an issue or issues that you disagree with your party's leaders about? Allison, we'll start with you this time.
Well, I mean, I can think of a lot of issues that I feel are passionate. I'm not sure if I would disagree or agree with the party leader, but I know that the issues that I see here in the 7th Plymouth District are the opioid crisis. I mean, that's affecting many of our homes and many of our families and many of our friends. Chapter 70 funding, and that's the school local aid that I keep talking about. Chapter 90 funding and grants to make sure that our roads and our infrastructures are up to par, to make sure that we can get in and out of our district. I mean, these are some of the issues that I'd be advocating for if elected on November 6th.
Alex, same question.
If I could pick one, I think it would be the grand bargain that was passed by both the House and Senate and signed by the governor in June. I think I would have rather have seen that go to a ballot question and let the people decide on that.
Thank you. Who would you say is your mentor, Alex?
I would say Stephen Lynch. I am lucky enough to be able to talk to him quite a bit. I get a lot of good advice from him. Yeah, I would say Stephen Lynch.
Thank you. And Allison?
My dad. I mean, my dad's done great work in my home life, in the community, in the Commonwealth. I mean, my mom as well. You know, I look up to the both of them, and they've instilled tremendous values in me to make sure that I'm the best person that I can possibly be. My dad has shown me what it's like to care about people, to make a difference. I mean, even today, coming into this debate, a gentleman said to my father, "You were the only person that listened, that came and sat down with me when I was in need." And that's someone that I want to be just like. I want to make sure that I have stories like that when, you know, if elected, and that my children, if I have children one day, will be able to hear.
Thank you. Next question. Question 1, on mandatory nurse staffing seems to be a tightly contested ballot initiative. What are your thoughts on this question, and how do you plan to vote? Allison, we start with you this time.
So I'm all in favor of improving health care, but Massachusetts has one of the leading hospitals in health care. And in question 1, I'm going to be voting no, because it's going to affect our hospitals. It's going to affect our access to care. It's going to affect our quality of care. It's going to affect the cost. I mean, if you look, it says $1.2 billion the first initial year, and then billions of dollars after that. I mean, we're talking about our local hospitals, Brockton Hospital, our community hospitals that many of us use, South Shore Hospital. Those are where it is going to be affected, and care is going to be diverted to major hospitals in Boston. Access to those hospitals are going to become limited, and the cost of healthcare is going to rise. So it's going to affect our district tremendously, and I'm opposed to that.
Thank you. Alex?
I take the opposite view. I am definitely voting yes on question 1. This is not a government mandate. This proposal was put forth by the Mass Nurses Association. The Mass Nurses are the ones that are on the front lines. They know what it takes to take care of these patients, not CEOs sitting in the office that got a $5 million pay raise last year. That's where the money needs to be cut and hire more nurses. I support the Mass Nurses 100% on this issue.
Thank you. We'll start with you on this next question. What private sector experience would help you as a state representative?
Well, I think being in business for over 30 years, I know what it takes to manage people. I know what it takes to pay for health insurance and meet payroll. I think that, along with my charity work in the district, I think that's some of the qualifications that make me the better candidate.
Thank you. Allison, same.
Some of my work experiences most definitely makes me, I believe, qualified to serve the people well. In my work experiences, I've been able to effectively listen to people, to hear the issues and think of possible solutions. You know, I worked in the United States Attorney's Office and their victim witness services, and to hear stories and hold hands of victims of crimes, and knowing, you know, how scary that might be, and walking them through that, and knowing that they have someone that they can turn to and talk to, and someone that's going to listen. And I think those qualifications is what the people of our district want. Someone that's going to represent them, that's going to listen to them, and work closely with them to make sure that we're finding the best possible solutions to the issues that are here.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with you. Both candidates have expressed interest in increasing local aid. Discuss your plan to do so. Well,
My plan would be to work with the administration, to work closely with Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito to work towards getting grants and funding from both federal and state funding. I also believe that, you know, we have a transportation bond bill that's been at $200 million for several years. So I'll work at moving that number up to $300 million, which will, Chapter 90 money will allow us to get grants here to fix our roads, to fix our infrastructures, to fix our bridges, and to fix our transportation. So that's one way that I plan on doing it.
Thank you. Alex, same question.
Could you repeat the?
Sure. Both candidates have expressed interest in increasing local aid provided by state government. Discuss your plan to increase local aid.
Well, one way we can increase local aid is with the casinos that have been built. which are estimated to bring in $300 million. Airbnb could bring in a possible $25 million. The cannabis industry, up to $200 million. And sports betting, dependent if it's allowed at casinos or just offshore and online, could be anywhere from $8 to $60 million. That, divided up between the towns, would make a huge difference in our district.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Alex. What is your stand on recreational marijuana shops opening in the Plymouth 7th District?
I voted against it, but the people of the district, especially in Abington, voted in favor of it. And as a selectman, I endorsed it because the residents had voted in favor of it. I think it needs to be controlled carefully. I think we still have some issues because we don't have a test that's been approved yet for drug driving, if you would. So I think that really needs to be looked at before we fully implement it. Abington, as you know, has a moratorium until next June, I believe it is, on that, and those were some of the reasons why we put those moratoriums on.
Allison, same question.
So I personally voted against it, but the people of Abington voted for it. They voted for it in a section of the town. They zoned it to one section. What I would do is, make sure that Abington gets their fair share of the funds from it, to make sure they benefit. If we're gonna have it in Abington, and the people decided to have it in Abington, I would make sure that we're getting the most possible benefit.
Thank you. Next question. What do you see as the fundamental difference between you and your opponent? Allison, we start with you.
Transparency. I believe that the difference between my opponent and I is I'm very transparent. And I'm somebody that the people can trust and know that I'm going to listen to their issues and I'm going to advocate on their best interest, and that what they hear from me is what it's going to be.
Thank you. Alex, same question.
I think my experience, 27 years as a volunteer for the town of Abington, and the accomplishments I made during those 27 years, I think people want someone with a proven track record that has accomplished things in an elected office. And I think that's the primary difference between myself and my opponent.
Thank you. And we'll start with you for the next question. What would you do to get more resources for our district's roads, bridges, and infrastructure?
Well, again, with the money coming from the casinos and Airbnb and sports betting and cannabis, I think that's where the money will be coming from.
Thank you. Allison?
I would work to increase the transportation bond bill from $200 million to $300 million. With that increase, it will ensure that more towns get more money for Chapter 90 funds.
Thank you. We'll start with you for the next one. What would a successful first term look like for you? What goals or accomplishments should voters judge you on 2 years from now?
Be an effective listener, making sure I'm available and accessible, making sure I listen to the needs of the people here in the district, knowing who sent me to Beacon Hill, and always remaining true to those values, and voting on behalf of the people here, and not personally what I might stand for, but listening to your values and what you want to see happen.
Thank you. Alex?
I think it's obvious everyone in this district wants more local aid and more school funding. And like I said, my number one choice would be the Education Committee. And that's what I would be most proud of, if I could bring more local aid, school funding to the towns in the first term.
Thank you. We'll start with you for the next question. Do you support sanctuary cities and sanctuary state?
I would never vote for sanctuary state on the state level. I think first of all, I don't think it's a big issue for this district, but if it were, I think it should be up to the voters. I personally think if an undocumented immigrant commits a crime, they should be dealt with and deported. But I also don't think that someone should be in fear of calling for medical help or for their elderly parents or sick child either. I don't think they should live in that fear. But I think we need a better path to citizenship, and what we have now just isn't working.
Thank you. Allison?
So I've worked in the immigration court, and I've seen firsthand what our communities it's exposed to. So I would not be in support of sanctuary cities or sanctuary state. We need to know who's coming into our state, who's here, what they're doing, and when they're doing it. We need to have our local law enforcement, our state law enforcement, and our federal law enforcement have the ability to work together. This isn't a case of targeting all immigration and immigrants that are here in the community. This is a case of targeting people that have committed crimes here in our communities, people that are affecting our daily lives by committing those crimes. We want to make sure that our police officers have the ability to work with federal law enforcement agents to ensure the public safety is upheld. It's a public safety issue, and that's what we have to remember. We want to make sure that our children are safe.
Thank you. Allison, do you support the state fully funding the police Quinn bill?
So I was talking about the Quinn bill with my father, and he mentioned to me that actually my grandfather graduated with Mr. Quinn. So the Quinn bill is, for military people that have served. Not our military, our police officers who went for further education, and getting that extra pay and that pay increase in their base pay. And I fully support that. I think someone that furthers their education, having an educated police force is an asset, and the police officers to work with our communities and to know the certain situations and how to handle them, because they've had the training and the education to back that up. So I fully support the Quinn bill.
Thank you. Alex?
I would fully support the Quinn bill. I think when it was in effect before, I think it benefited a lot of people, and I also think it benefited the cities and towns. That was something that I talked about in the last police contract in Abington. It didn't get put in. We were told that maybe in the next contract, and I would like to see, but that's not the Quinn bill, but the town paying for education, or an education stipend in there. I definitely think the officers deserve that, and I think I would be in favor of the Quinn bill fully funded.
Thank you. Next question. Would you support a statewide ban on plastic bags? Alex?
The jury's still out on that one. I've asked a lot of people. I've asked people in the supermarket business. I think the short answer is yes, eventually. I think I would. I would. I think it's just like the plastic bottles. They're getting out of control now, and I think something needs to be done about it. So, yes.
Thank you. Allison, same question.
So I differ from my opponent. No, I would not support a statewide ban on plastic bags. I think that should be up to the communities and the voters within each community to decide.
Thank you. Start with you for the next question. What should the sales tax rate be?
I think the sales tax rate should go back to 5%. We're looking at a statewide budget that we have a surplus in. The state obviously is collecting their fair share of funds, and I think we should be able to bring back the 5%.
Alex?
I think it should be at 6.25%. I think if we're going to cut it, I'd like to see where the revenue is going to come from it. And the state surplus has been allocated within the last couple of weeks. The House has decided what they're going to do with that. Some is going to rainy day fund, others are going to go for infrastructure and other things. That's a potentially one-time revenue source. We can't use that to lower the sales tax and then not have enough money to do what we need to do next year. So I think unless someone can show me, nobody's in favor of higher taxes. I'm in favor of lower taxes too, but I'm not in favor of lower taxes just to say we lowered taxes and then have to cut services.
Thank you. Alex, Both candidates have vowed to fight the opioid epidemic in our communities. How do you differ from your opponent in your plans to fight this?
Well, the big difference is I'm doing something about it now. I don't have to wait till I get to Beacon Hill to do something. By going to Beacon Hill will only enhance what I'm doing on the opioid crisis now. Like I said earlier, we were lucky enough to get a $50,000 grant within the last couple of days for the Abington Substance Awareness Coalition. And that money will be used for further school programs in the health classes and prevention programs for our students.
Thank you. Allison, same question?
The opioid crisis is hitting my generation. I've had friends, family members that have died from heroin overdoses. I've held the hand of a mother that lost a child, told a sister that one day it will be okay. One day you will get through this. Like many of you, you probably know somebody that knows somebody that's been affected. The survivors, the ones that are fighting each and every day to remain in recovery. I might not have a substance awareness coalition, but what I have is personal experience and the effects that it's having on my generation, the effects it's having on my parents' generation, raising grandchildren. I'm gonna make sure that I work hard each and every day with the District Attorney Cruz, Sheriff McDonald, and the police chiefs of our communities to ensure that less and less people fall victim to opioids, that less and less families have to bury children because of overdoses. That's what I'm gonna do.
Thank you, Allison. Just an aside to the people here in the audience, feel free to still fill out cards for any more questions. We're running a little low, so if anybody has any questions that maybe they had in mind that haven't been asked yet, feel free. Okay, next question. We'll start with Allison on this one. If elected to office in November, what will your #1 priority in January be? What's the first bill you will file?
Well, many priorities come to mind. I mean, Chapter 70 funding, like I've said throughout my campaign, is to make sure that our schools are fully funded, that our state upholds their original promise, to make sure our schools have the resources and tools they need to make sure our children are successful. The opioid crisis, I want to work hard to make sure that we have less and less fatal deaths from opioids. In Chapter 90, to make sure that we get more money into the funds, to make sure our roads and our infrastructures are well taken care of and well managed.
Thank you, Alex. Same question.
Exactly what was the question again? I know what first bill, but read it, please.
If elected to office in November, what will be your #1 priority in January, and what is the first bill you will file?
Well, I think my #1 priority would be to see if I could get on the Education Committee, like I said. If we can increase school funding, if we could get $1 million for each of our 3 towns, that frees up $1 million elsewhere in the budget for the towns. I believe the Abington school budget is 65% of the town budget. So if we could free up some of that money from the school budget and get it from the state, we could allocate that elsewhere. But one of the bills that I would propose has nothing to do with that. I would like to see the hands-free cell phone bill finally get passed. I know they've tried for the last couple of sessions and it hasn't worked. I would like to see that get passed.
Thank you. Next question. Are there 2 examples of state government waste that you have identified and will propose eliminating? Alex?
Frankly, off the top of my head, I can't think of, no.
Allison?
Specifically, two examples. No, but I honestly think we should always constantly look at legislation. We should look at departments and where the funds are going. You know, the healthcare is a huge portion of our budget. We should be looking into our healthcare and how we can have reform there to make sure there isn't waste and there isn't fraud, and to make sure that the monies are being used where they're supposed to be used. Holding people accountable when they're misusing the funds.
Thank you, Allison. Next question. How would you, as state representative, what would you do as state representative to help Abington school safety? I suppose you can answer that as all three schools.
Well, school safety is obviously a huge priority for each town, for the teachers, for the students, for the police officers and firefighters. I actually had the opportunity to talk to one of the fire chiefs in one of the towns, and he mentioned to me about active shooter drills and how firefighters are going into these active shooter drills without any type of armor. Our police officers, they're trained to disarm, someone with a gun. They're trained and they have the ability and the resources they need. They have bulletproof vests, they have a gun, they have other resources. Our firefighters are going in blind. And, what I would do is I would look at whether or not we have an opportunity to be more safe with them. Whether it be with a bulletproof vest or a bulletproof armor, to make sure when they're going in to help save lives and children's and students and teachers, that they're also making sure that they come out alive as well.
Thank you. Alex.
I think the Abington Police Department has started some very good programs, and they do the active shooter training when the schools are closed for vacation. It's a collaborative effort with the fire department. We have school resource officers now. I think they're doing a great job on it, and I think they just need to continue the training. And part of the police training is a new bill that was passed. Our current state rep voted against it, but it's a $2 fee on rental cars that will go to the state cities and towns for police training. And I think that's a good step that way to continue the training for all these schools.
Thank you. Next question. Development at Union Point appears to have stalled again. Should L-Star remain the project's main developer? And how would you advocate on the behalf of Abington for this project?
Me?
Yes, sir.
I've seen South Point, South, whatever, all the names that it's gone through, L-Star and all of them. I think the group that's in there now, they obviously have some issues going on with the partners, but I would prefer to let them work out their internal business issues and keep them going over there. We've had 20 years with starts and stops and starts and stops. Abington has 40 acres of commercial land over there, and it's estimated that if we fully build that out, we would get $6 to $8 million per year in tax revenue. So I think L-Star has some good ideas. I know there was just a change of management. I'd like to see them continue and see if they can come true with the promises they've made us.
Thank you. Allison, same question.
So from my understanding, Union Point has been an ongoing issue for about 20 plus years. So there's clearly an issue there. The mayor of Weymouth said, made some remarks that things need to start moving, things need to be done. There's a huge opportunity in Union Point for Abington and even the surrounding towns, Whitman and East Bridgewater, to benefit from growth in Union Point. We need to really either get moving or look at other ways that we can start a project there to make sure that we're all benefiting from Union Point.
Thank you. And we'll start with you, Allison, for this question. What is your position on transparency in government?
Transparency is huge. Of course, everyone wants a legislator who's going to be transparent. I mean, I think the state representatives and the state senators should be transparent. Everyone in the district who votes for their state legislators to go up to Beacon Hill should know exactly what they're doing and when they're doing it. I want to know what my state legislator is doing, and I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to be 100% transparent. And I will hold true to that promise.
Thank you, Alex.
I think that goes without saying. I think we need that in all forms of government. I think on Beacon Hill, I will be as transparent as possible. I'll be available to the people of this district. I'll have a district office. I'll have people in that district office. They'll know all the time what's going on. We'll have newsletters. We'll have email change going out. We'll be completely transparent as your state representative.
Thank you. Next question. Question 2 on the creation of a commission to consider and recommend potential amendments to the United States Constitution to establish that corporations do not have the same constitutional rights as human beings and that campaign contributions and expenditures may be regulated. How will you vote and why?
That is me?
Yes, sir.
That's question 2.
Yes.
Yes. I will be voting yes on question 2. You talk about transparency, this is the exact reason we need to vote on question 2. We need a yes vote on question 2 for transparency.
Thank you. Allison.
I'm 100% for transparency. Massachusetts has one of the strongest campaign finance laws. My donations that have come into the campaign are all listed on OCPF website. So, but I'm going to be voting no on question 2. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question. Why do you want to run, or why did you run, and why do you want to be state representative? Allison.
I'm passionate about this, about the issues that are facing our district. Like I said, and I'll say it again, the opioid crisis, it's affecting too many of our families. Too many. Too many friends, too many relatives, just too many. And we need to do more. We need to continue to do more. My plan is to work very closely with Sheriff McDonald, DA Cruz, our police chiefs, and our police officers within the community. Chapter 70 funding. I know teachers. And, you know, I've had teachers that I still communicate with from when I was in elementary school and junior high. And I want to make sure that the next generation gets the same education that I received when I went to Abington Public Schools. So I'm going to fight to make sure that there's fully fair share of local aid coming to Abington, Whitman, and East Bridgewater.
Thank you. And Alex.
The reason I want to run is because I have a proven track record of getting things accomplished. When an issue comes before me, I find a solution for it. I did that as a water commissioner. I did that on the Conservation Commission. I did that as a selectman. I've done that in my personal life, and I've done that in my charities. I think those reasons there make me the best candidate for this job and the candidate that can bring back to the towns what we need with local aid and continue my fight on the opioids. But I think those are the reasons I'm running. I'm running to do good in this district for no other reason but just to help the people of this district.
Thank you. And the next question. Robert DeLeo has been Speaker of the House since 2009. Will you vote to keep him Speaker? Why or why not? Alex.
Alex, yes. Yes, I think I would vote to keep him Speaker. I think overall he's done a good job. He works well with the Baker administration. And at this point, I would vote to keep him. I can't think of someone else that I would think would be a better speaker. I think he's more of a moderate, and he looks at both sides, and he tries to get the best solution. I don't always agree with him, and I didn't agree with him on the grand bargain, but overall, I think I would vote for him to continue as Speaker.
Thank you. Allison.
I won't be voting to keep him as Speaker. I believe that leadership roles should have term limits to make sure that everyone's being represented. I don't believe that I would be voting for him to continue being Speaker.
Thank you. Next question. Traffic congestion is getting worse. The T is not as reliable as it should be and getting more expensive. What solutions will you what solutions will you bring regarding transportation in the state?
Well, I know what it's like to take the commuter rail into Boston every day or going on the highway, the expressway. I know what the traffic's like going in and out of the city. You know, I'm the only candidate that understands that. I travel in Monday through Friday and sometimes on the weekends as well. What I would do is exactly what I've been saying I'm going to do. I'm going to advocate to increase the transportation bond bill to $300 million. It's been at $200 million for far too long. Our communities need more money for Chapter 90 funds to make sure that less and less congestion, and that our trains are up to par, and to make sure that, you know, the trains are running on time, whether it be the commuter rail or the red line, or that, you know, we can get in and out of Abington, Whitman, and East Bridgewater at a faster rate and not as much congestion.
Thank you, Alex.
I think we need to increase funding and expand on a commuter rail system. I also think that if we had more economic development down in our district, it would alleviate some of the traffic going north into the city of Quincy or into Boston. I would like to look into doing something like that. The Route 18 expansion will help when it's finished, but I have some issues with MassDOT now, with their communications and some of the work that's going on there. I'm actually traveling Route 18 every day right now for the work I'm doing, and it's a mess. I mean, it can take an hour to get to Quincy, and I think they need better communication, better emails, and better communications with the people. But I think overall, we need to look into our train system.
Thank you, Alex. And we'll start with you for the next question. What issue have you found that is specific to the towns of Abington, Whitman, and East Bridgewater that you feel is currently being ignored by the state?
I think, well, all three towns have different issues. Whitman drastically needs a new DPW building and some work there. I would try and bring some money back to Whitman to help with that. East Bridgewater has major problems with their intersection of Route 18 and Central Street, and I've already talked to Old Colony Planning Council about that. And Abington has some infrastructure problems, a bridge over by Island Grove and some other road work that needs to be done. So all three towns have kind of similar but different issues. But it basically all goes back to Chapter 90 funding.
Thank you. Allison.
There's several issues, you know, between Abington, Whitman, and East Bridgewater. East Bridgewater has multiple intersections that are very dangerous intersections where multiple car accidents have taken place. And the issue is whether it's a town road or a state road. So if I get elected, I would look at and try to work with the town of East Bridgewater to determine whether it's a town road or a state road. If it's a state road, I would advocate that somebody comes down and looks at it and to figure out better ways to make sure that the people in East Bridgewater and the people traveling through East Bridgewater are safe while traveling their roads. The town of Whitman, several different issues as far as Chapter 70 funding to make sure that our schools in Whitman are well taken care of, to make sure that they're getting their fully fair share of local aid. Abington, same thing, to make sure that we are getting Chapter 70 funding to make sure that our children are getting the education that they deserve. Chapter 90, you know, transportation and infrastructure, to make sure that we're getting the grants that we need to make sure.
Thank you, Allison. We'll start with you for the next one. What would you say to the independent voter, the one not attached to a party and still undecided? Why are you the right person to represent the future of Abington, Whitman, and East Bridgewater?
I'm going to be an independent voice. I'm going to listen to all people. If elected, I'm going to represent everyone, from Republicans to Democrats to independents. I'm not going to look at a face and see an R next to it. I'm not going to look at a face and see a D next to it. I'm going to look at a face and see a resident of Abington, Whitman, or East Bridgewater. And I'm going to work on behalf of everyone to make sure that they can have the confidence in me, to be proud of me to be their state representative.
Thank you. And Alex, same question.
I would say to the independent voters that you want someone on Beacon Hill that has experience, that has a proven track record, and someone that will represent all the people of the 7th Plymouth District. I'm a working person just like most people in this district, and I will represent all the people of the district.
Thank you. Next question you'll answer first. Multiple reports, including one from the South Shore Chamber of Commerce, say municipalities need to do more to encourage housing growth to help combat high housing prices and support the region's growing labor base. The legislature is even considering a zoning reform bill. As state rep, how would you advocate on the behalf of your communities on this topic?
Well, I think before we look into too much more growth in housing in this district, we need to look at our water problem. I was lucky enough to work in agreement with the mayor of Brockton to increase our sewer by 500,000 gallons. But by increasing the sewer by 500,000 gallons, that increases our water usage by 750,000 gallons, and we don't have that right now. We could not utilize the entire amount of sewer that we have because we don't have water to do it. Abington, Whitman, and East Bridgewater need to come up with a water source before we can just blindly say yes to the state zoning rules and just continue to build houses.
Thank you. Allison, same question.
Well, what I would do is I would turn to each town and I would look at and talk to the Board of Selectmen and to see what their suggestion might be. You know, there's some empty buildings in Abington, Whitman, East Bridgewater that if we improve them and build up, we might draw more businesses and small businesses and residents, and which would increase our funds here in Abington, Whitman, East Bridgewater. You know, I'm not going to make a blanket statement, but I would work with each individual town and advocate for whatever is in their best interest.
Thank you. Question 3, adding gender identity to the list of prohibited grounds for discrimination in places of public accommodation. How will you vote and why?
So I'm against discrimination. I don't think anybody should be discriminated against. You know, I'm a woman running in for office. I mean, I know what discrimination looks like. So I don't believe anybody should be discriminated against. However, in the question 3, there's some loopholes that I have concerns about. So I would be voting no for question 3 because I think we should look at those loopholes to make sure everyone is protected and that everybody feels safe, especially in a place like the bathroom. So that's where I stand.
Thank you. Alex.
I think everyone should be treated equal. I'll be voting yes on question 3. You know, the bathroom issue always comes up, and I haven't heard any problems because of this. I think everyone should be treated equally, no matter what. There is no gray area here. Everyone should be treated equally, and I will vote yes, as will Governor Baker on this question.
Thank you. The legislature voted and approved an automatic increase in the gas tax. Do you support the repeal? Why or why not? Alex.
The legislature,
they voted.
There was a ballot question. There was a ballot question that ended the ballot question a few years ago stopped the automatic increase. It did not stop the legislature from voting every year to increase the gas tax. If they want to raise it, they have to vote every year. And our state rep actually voted to increase it this year. So I don't think there should have been an automatic increase. I think it should be up to the legislature every year. And it was voted this year.
Thank you. Allison, same question.
I'm against automatic increases for any tax. I think that should be a decision that's made year by year, circumstance by circumstance. I'm completely opposed to automatic increases on taxes.
Thank you. What criminal justice reform specifically would you support?
Oh, that's me, sorry.
Yes. Sorry.
You know, I support the most recent dangerousness bill that Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito put forth. It gives, you know, our police officers, our prosecutors, more resources and tools they need to make sure that their jobs are, you know, safe and to make sure our streets are safe. I mean, we saw the tragedy that happened just in Weymouth, and my heart goes out to Sergeant Chesna and his whole family. And with the dangerousness bill, it will make it less likely that perpetrators like the one in Weymouth will be out on our streets. It will allow police officers to enforce the regulations that have been placed on bail restrictions and reforms, and to make sure that our prosecutors have the tools they need to ensure that there's a safe community each and every day.
Thank you. Alex?
I've read Governor Baker's proposal, and I do support that. Actually, I made a statement about this when it first came out. I'm all in favor of giving everyone a second chance, but when you have a dangerous person or people like we had recently in Yarmouth and Weymouth, you can only give someone so many chances before it affects the society. So I think the proposal is a good proposal. I'm all in favor of an appeal period. If a judge wants to release someone, I think the DA should have an appeal to hold that person if it seems fit. I'm also in favor of reviewing the judges on a periodic basis. So for the most part, I'm in favor of the governor's proposal.
Thank you, Alex. Next question starts with you. Should Route 18 be widened down to Whitman Center or even East Bridgewater Center?
Yes. I don't see that happening in our lifetime, but I definitely think it should. I think all we're doing is moving the traffic jam down to the center of Abington, the Route 18 in Abington now, because it's going to stop at 139. So I definitely think that's something that will probably be done in the future, but it's a long way off. This expansion has been 10 or so years talked about. It was talked about when I was on the Conservation Commission years ago, and it's finally happening now. So I would definitely be in favor of moving that all the way down to East Bridgewater and maybe even beyond at some point, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Thank you, Alex. Allison, same question.
I don't know if I can say that I would fully support it. I'm just thinking in my head where, standing outside holding signs on Route 18 and seeing cars fly by. I'm thinking public safety. And our, high school is right on Route 18, and thinking about the cars that fly down the street. So I'd want to look at what the speed limit would be. I want to look at how it's going to be enforced by our local police department. I think for traffic reasons, most definitely the expansion of Route 18 all the way into East Bridgewater would be good, because then there's 2 lanes on each side, so people can get out of East Bridgewater, more quickly, and to Route 3, and Whitman as well. I just worry about the safety of the children that live along 18 and the kids that go to school along Route 18 as well.
Thank you. Next question starts with you. What should the income tax rate be?
I think the income tax rate should be back down to 5% as well. We're looking at, the hard-working dollars that go into your pockets each and every day. I think, our budget, our statewide budget shows that we definitely, we don't have a revenue problem, we have the spending problem. So I think everyone should get, a break there. I think more money deserves to be going back in the pockets of the people that work hard every day.
Thank you. Alex?
This is the same as the sales tax question. Unless we have another revenue source, I'm not in favor of cutting taxes just for the sake of cutting taxes. I know a few dollars every week means a lot to a lot of people, but you have to look at the services we have, and we can't just cut taxes just for the sake of cutting taxes.
Thank you. Next question. Do you support the use of budgetary earmarks for local projects, or are earmarks just wasteful budgetary pork?
Well, I don't think it's all just waste. I think for Whitman example, when I'm on Beacon Hill, if I can get an earmark for them to do a study for their DPW building or to design it, I don't think that's a waste. I think that's how it's done, and that would be my job to get those earmarks for our district.
Thank you. Allison?
I think in certain situations, earmarks wouldn't be wasteful. So it would all depend on the situation at hand.
Okay, thank you. Last question comes from an anonymous source. How hard will you work to support Rick Collins' effort to secure more DCR investment in Ames Knoll State Park? really hard or super hard? Allison.
Is this a one-word answer like WATD?
Am I going, I'm first,
Are
okay.
you going to work really hard or super hard?
So
to help Ames
I'm going to work super hard. Ames Knoll is right down the street of my childhood home. I remember going there as a child and riding my mountain bike through the trails. I'm hearing stories about how the trails are barely there. Benches broken. I mean, I remember going there as a kid and people were grilling on the grills there. I mean, we had a canoe. I mean, the canoe's still in our garage. We don't use it that much, but we canoed in Ames Knoll. So most definitely, I think the kids in the neighborhood, the young ones that are coming up that remind me of me when I was a child, should have the same ability to use Ames Knoll the way that I did.
Thank you. Alex.
I'm definitely going to work super hard because Rick has had this in my ear for probably 5 years now. As a selectman, we actually sold a parcel of land to the state that connects there. And Rick has got an idea of bringing the entrance out to Chestnut Street, which I think would be a great idea. It's out of the neighborhood. It's on sort of a main road. It would be accessible to a lot more people. I think a lot of people don't even know how to get to Ames Knoll. And I think Rick has got some great ideas for that. And Senator Keenan has helped us along. And I'll work super hard right along with John Keenan.
Thank you, Alex. That was our final question. I want to thank the audience for the questions tonight. It actually worked out perfectly that we're just about right at the 1 hour. So we'll move on to closing statements. Alex, you're first in closing your closing statement. You have 2 minutes.
Yes. Again, I want to thank the Abington Democratic Town Committee and the Abington Republican Town Committee for the opportunity to present our ideas. And to the people of Abington, Whitman, and East Bridgewater, this election is a very important election in our district. This election is more than just Democrat versus Republican. This election is about who understands what this district needs, who has the experience to represent you, who has a proven track record of getting things accomplished, who is already working on issues of the district such as the opioid and addiction problem, and who will be your full-time state representative. I think the answer is clear. There's only one candidate in this race that can say yes to all of those. And that candidate is me, Alex Bezanson. I am the best candidate for this office, and I think that's backed up by the numerous endorsements that I've received from both union, elected officials, and former elected officials. I am a true working man. Just like most people in this district, I care, I understand, and I will deliver. I urge you to make your voice heard and vote for me, Alex Bezanson, either by early voting or on November 6th. Again, my name is Alex Bezanson, and thank you for listening. Good night.
Thank you, Alex. The final 2 minutes are yours, Allison.
I want to thank the host for this forum tonight, the moderator, those in the audience, and the ones listening at home. I want to continue the tradition of the leaders before me, legislators of our district that we're proud of. My life experiences, education, professional life have prepared me to be a well-served state representative. But it takes more than that to be an effective and respected representative. It takes someone who listens, learns, thinks, and does so with passion and humility. I promise to always listen well, to be thoughtful as I work towards solutions to our challenges, and to be open and transparent as a strong and passionate voice, and to take action in the best interests of the people I serve. I promise to work hard each and every day as a representative that the people of Abington, East Bridgewater, and Whitman can be proud of. This is why I ask for your vote, either in the early election or on November 6th. Thank you, and have a good night.
And people may be watching at home that Abington does have extended hours at Town Hall for early voting. Monday through Thursday, they're open from 8:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. And Friday, they're open 8:30 to 12:30. Saturday, October 27th, they'll be open from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So if you're unable to make it on Election Day, November 6th, please come in early and make sure you cast your vote. Also, thank you again to both candidates. Thank you to Abington Cam, especially Justin, for making us be able to show this live tonight so everybody can see it before the election. Thank you again.
Thank you.